I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is the regular scheduled meeting for the Bond Referendum Public Infrastructure Subcommittee, Wednesday, November the 6th, 2024, and it is 5:49. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The agenda is calling for a moment of silence. Moment of silence. Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Good afternoon. Chairman Roque Vela Jr.,
Present.
Vice Chairman Juan Narvaez,
Present.
Secretary Arturo Dominguez,
Here.
Gerardo Jerry Maldonado,
Present virtually.
From the other side.
thank you. Gerald Schrubbel,
Didn't hear you.
Mr. Schrubbel, can you hear us? Hello, Mr. Schrubbel? Okay, well, he's on the,
On the screen.
we can
He
see him on the
is
screen.
present, and can we get IT work in the background on that, please?
Mayra Hernandez,
Present.
Mr. Bill Young? Not present. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you.
Motion to excuse the person absent.
There's a motion to excuse all unpresent commissioners. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Motion passes. Has everybody had a chance to see the minutes? And if so, can I entertain a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
There's a motion, a second to approve the minutes. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
All against? Motion passes. Citizen comments. Do we have any citizens in the audience that would like to comment? No citizen comments. Okay, moving on to item number 6. It is presentation by Texas Department, the Texas Department of Transportation, TxDOT, as it relates to Farm to Market Road 1472 to provide for a higher highway designation based on a number of factors with possible action and any other matters incident thereto.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the committee. Luis Villarreal with TxDOT, Advanced Planning Supervisor. Online virtually, we have Roberto Rodriguez, our Director of Transportation and Development, and he will be...
Good afternoon.
Yes, and I'll go ahead and allow him to introduce himself once again.
Yes, good afternoon. Roberto Rodriguez with the Texas Department of Transportation.
Yeah, so just with respect to an ongoing FM 1472 feasibility study, I know there were some inquiries about next steps on the current study that is occurring, and our director will be presenting at this time, and I'll be advancing the slides as he goes along. Go ahead, Roberto.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Luis. And I guess, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Perfect.
we can. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes, like I said, like I mentioned, is there's going to be 3 actually parts to this presentation. The first one that we'll be talking about is the 1472 study that we have going on, and the second one will be the and I don't get to see the slides. I don't know if that's I don't see it on the screen, but I guess I'll try to work out of my memory here. Is there some?
Yeah, let's go ahead and share it, Roberto.
Okay. Okay, there you go. I see. All right. like I said, we're gonna be talking about the three items right now regarding 1472. The first one is gonna be the current feasibility study that I covered briefly last time, and I'm gonna talk to you all about a development timeframe for this project. Then we're gonna talk about the 1472 functional classification and what's the functional classification of the roadway. And then the topic that you all wanna talk about also, the new highway designation. Next slide, please. On the time frame that we have, on this project, this is a compressed schedule. This is for any typical project, within TxDOT. It takes quite a few years to go from procuring a contract, obtaining the planning and development authority and a consultant selection. As you can tell, we kind of strike those out because that already happened. We already went through that procedure. We're starting on planning feasibility and study that we're doing right now for the first segment, from 69 to about 2 miles north of FM 3338. So when you see that red stripe, that red line, that's exactly where we are right now. And on top, of course, you see that the years, what year are we at on the process. So within the plan of feasibility study, we are planning of completing that within a year. Having that plan of what is it that's going to be the alternative to build in FM 1472. After that, we'll start developing the schematic, and soon after, we'll start looking at how much right-of-way we need. We need to do right-of-way mapping, and start working with any utility relocations. At the same time, we're working our environmental clearance. Once we have our schematic complete and approved, we start working with the PSNE, which is actual the plans. The plans ready to take it out, the project to letting. Now, like I mentioned, this is a typical project. That does not mean, it will take 5 years, 4 years to get a project to construction. There can be some other projects that we're looking for at a smaller scale that can be completed within this time. Maybe smaller PSNEs for some overpasses and some other stuff that can be done right now, within this time. But something that I do want to mention, which is very, very critical in our development, it's right in the middle. You see a decision point, which is the funding strategy. So we have from now until about a year from now to define how are we going to fund this entire project, or how are we going to be breaking it up and fund it in segments. That's something that we would like to bring back to you all probably within a month, to see, okay, what projects can we broken down on how we can break it up and find some funding to develop this alternative, and eventually at the end, have a ultimate design that we want, which is the freeway facility in FM 1472. Are there any questions on this slide, as far as the development of the
Yes,
project?
Mr. Rodriguez, is Roquevela here. You mentioned that you want to come back to us in about a month or so with the funding strategy. I don't know that we'll be meeting in a month. Not this subcommittee anyway. The larger committee will probably still be meeting by then. And I know we'd really like to, if there is any suggestion that this subcommittee is going to make to that larger committee and then ultimately the city council,
Okay.
and if there's going to be any suggestions coming from us in regards to 1472, we're gonna, obviously this is not an easy task. If we're talking about a $1 billion project, and that's the over-under,
Right.
We need something a little bit sooner than that.
So what's your time frame for your decision on the?
I would say, we were kind of talking about it in the background earlier. I think we're going to meet 2 more times after this. Then we're going to have Thanksgiving after that. And then after Thanksgiving, first week of December, we'll probably be putting a bow on this subcommittee and taking our recommendations to,
All right.
to the committee.
We'll work with that. I'll talk to the consultant tomorrow. And so they can give us something a lot sooner, even though the whole feasibility and all the public involvement and the stakeholders meeting have not taken place, but at least to come up with some alternatives of what kind of projects could be added to the program. But we'll work on that. We'll get with the consultant right on tomorrow and start developing some strategy.
Great, thank you.
Coming that way, though. Thank you. Now, on the next slide, what I'm going to talk about, there's a couple of things on each highway, in each Texas highway. One is the designation of the highway. Is it an FM? Is it an interstate? Is it a state highway? And the other thing that is critical on our highways is what is the functional classification? Now, this functional classification is what's really determines the funding of the type of project. For example, some of them, we start with the minor collectors, that what you see on the map, I know that might be a little hard to see, but some of those roads that you see in yellow, we cannot use federal funds. We're restricted from using federal funds on those projects. But then what you see on the pink, green, and then on, it's the, as you move on the colors, is the higher functional classification of the roadways. As you can see, for Laredo, our principal arterials, which are the higher that we can have without being an interstate design, its principal arterial, which FM 1472, State Highway 255, US 83, are designated as, they're already principal arterials. The only way to move into the next category as far as a functional classification is to have a design and a roadway constructed as an interstate. Then they will move to the black color, which is a principal arterial, but is not exactly designated as a freeway, or it's not designated as an interstate. It's a freeway and expressway. And then, of course, the one we have as an interstate, which is shown in blue, that's our interstate. Now, this functional classification is critical on our roadways because that really impacts our allocation and funding and the funding for the roadways, the functional classification. So I wanted to make sure we differentiate between what's a functional classification of the road and what's a highway or roadway designation, which I will be covering on the next slide. Now let's talk about highway designation. This is some of the definitions that came out of the Texas manual, our planning manual. And you see an FM road is a roadway that is generally in a rural area, which we know 1472 again doesn't seem to be a rural area anymore. I mean, the way it's grown, all the development in that area. Then we have a state highway. What's a state highway? It's a roadway that is designated by the Texas Transportation Commission. State highway loop, or what we call state loops, they're usually roadways created as a bypass, so as designated by the Transportation Commission. We have something what we call state spurs. We have a couple of these in Laredo. Those are roadways which usually begin on a state highway and they end on an off-system bridge roadway. And then we have what we call the U.S. highways. Like in Laredo, we have US 59, US 83. Those are highways designated by the federal government through FHWA and Ashton. Usually, U.S. highways are highways that connect major cities, major corridors along the state, such as US 59. Goes from Laredo, it goes all the way to Houston and continues through other states. US 83, which I believe is the longest highway in Texas. It starts in the valley, goes up through Laredo, goes north all the way to Amarillo, and it continues north, north out of Texas. So this is the designation rules right now. Going back to on the functional classification of the road, something else that is critical on these highways, and also as part of the functional classification, is FM 1472 is part of the national highway system for the state. Is part of the trunk system, for Texas. Is part of the connectivity corridors for Texas. So if you look at all the classification that the state has with roadways, FM 1472 is up there, on the rankings as far as the connectivity, the importance, of the highways. I'm happy to say that I guess with the improvements that were proposed by the Mines Road Coalition, which one of them was, I guess, closing that on-ramp on I-69 south of FM 1472. We went down from, I just got the list yesterday actually, of the 100 most congested truck routes, and it went down from number 2 to below number 10. So that was something that really helped out the traffic flow and the congestion on 1472. And things like that, that can be implemented to help out with the flow of traffic. Okay, we had a meeting with our what we call transportation planning and programming section, and I say, hey, what do we need to do to redesignate FM 1472? So we sat down, we started brainstorming, all these things, what could that be? And we decided, okay, well, what if we can have designated FM 1472 to a state highway from Interstate 35 to a state highway 255, which is a Columbia road over there. And that can be designated as a brand new state highway. They don't see a problem with changing the highway designation. Now they also suggested, what about doing a state loop 255? You have a state highway 255 that connects on 35, mile marker 25. You bring it down towards 1472. Then that portion of 1472 you redesignate it as a state loop 255. So you create a whole loop along Laredo, maybe even a portion of the outer loop. The first portion of the outer loop that is shown can be also part of the state loop 255. So that was another suggestion. Or actually, they said, well, why not state loop 1472, right? But that's, I think, 255 right now. It's a state highway that we have. So they asked, I asked, well, what are the requirements? Of course, it has to be approved by the Transportation Commission. It has to be reviewed by our TxDOT administration, which, based on their criteria, traffic, there's the traffic volumes. Lane width and number of lanes, there are the number of lanes that we need to, So we pretty much check most of the boxes, to be able to redesignate this highway. However, we do need a couple of things. One of them is a city resolution supporting this new change. Also, a county resolution, because parts of these roadways it's outside of the city limits, and any other entity that might be impacted, if there are any park roads or anything, any other entities that will be affected by the redesignation of 1472, will need support letters, from them. If we go with the alternative of doing a state loop 255, what will happen, the only changes that we will have is that if you look at the intersection of 255 and 1472, which Luis is pointing right there, from that point south to the Laredo Columbia Bridge, the little segment will have to be redesignated as an spur. And of course, the area on 1472 from that same intersection to the north, going toward Maury County, that could stay as an FM 1472. You see, so it's just a matter of discussing, and agreeing of what would be the best designation. Do we want to create a loop with 255, or do we rather just have a separate designation on FM
Mr.
1472?
Rodriguez, Commissioner Narvaez has a question.
Mr. Rodriguez, I know you mentioned Maverick County. I know at one time they were discussing the possibility of connecting the one road to Eagle Pass. Is that something in your projections also?
We at one time we were the Webb County and Maverick County had plans to do a connection between those two roads, FM 1472 and FM 1021. The plan is actually, back then, if I remember correctly, I wasn't in this position, but I want to say that TxDOT allocated some funding to help the counties with the study. So what we requested from the study is to do the feasibility study and come up with the right-of-way designation, which means, from here through here, this is county road. Now we can transfer that right-of-way to the city, to the state, so the state could come in and build a highway. That pretty much didn't went through, and I'm sure Mr. Swell, that he actually was very involved, Jerry, on this initiative, can probably give us more details.
I believe the last time the discussion was that because of grade separations, there was several creeks between Laredo and Eagle Pass. I think that was the reason that was put on hold, because they felt it was going to be kind of expensive to do all that. And then some landowners did not want to do any right-of-ways dedications.
Correct. If I remember correctly, that's the right-of-way. That was the main concern, the main issue on this front.
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Rodriguez. First, you have our local requirements, the two resolutions by the two different governmental entities, and you mentioned any other, possibly some other resolutions from other invested parties. Is that the case here, or is it just the city and the county?
It's just, I mean, what I foresee really is probably the city, the county resolution, maybe um, I guess maybe a letter of support from the Laredo Motor Carrier Association. Um, I mean, whatever information we could get,
Okay.
is, but I think with those two and a letter, one or two letters of support, it will be more than sufficient to prepare a package to submit to us.
My second question, you kind of skimmed over if it were to go from a farm to market road to a state highway or a state loop in this case, it makes it easier for funding, I think is what you mentioned, what it sounded like. What kind of different opportunities does that open up if we go to a state highway or a state loop?
There will not be necessarily more chances for funding. Of course, it catch more the attention when it's a state highway than FM road, because FM roads, just the fact that you mentioned FM road, you think the rural type of road, that you have on the ranches.
In the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
and this is certainly not a road in the middle of nowhere.
Correct. So now being an state, we can do it as a state loop. I've seen a lot of state loops that are actually designed and functioning as an interstate. And but most than having the highway designation is the functional classification that is critical, and making sure this road is in the trunk system, make sure it's in the connectivity system of the state, which it is, and the national highway system. So that's what really helps on the funding. But also, I mean, we want to make sure that at this time we do what's right for the road. I mean, this road is not, the function of it is not anymore an FM type of roadway. It's supposed to be a state highway, already.
Yes, it is, and it needs to function more like a state highway. I mean, right now it's still, to a certain extent, built like a farm to market. Although it does have some divisions in certain areas. But I mean, money needs to get invested in this piece of road.
Correct.
Clearly. So,
And we need to think about,
sorry, go ahead, ma'am.
and we need to think about growth and opportunity to expand from a city perspective. And
Yeah.
is that what we're aiming for?
Yes, that's the goal here, and the goal is to see in what kind of capacity, if at all, we decide to suggest to the city council to participate in this monetarily. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Rodriguez, Arturo Dominguez. Worst case scenario, number 6 is Vallecillo Road.
Is that another loop?
Correct.
What about if, worst case, that they wouldn't allow this, it's too big of a loop or whatever? Can we do a business 35 from 35, and instead of Vallecillo, that would be business 35 to connect back to 35?
Well, a business road is usually a road that runs along the existing interstate, and it connects on both ends back to the same interstate. Like San Bernardo, that will connect in the north and then connect at the south. So it has to be along, connecting back to that.
Because you're going out past the mall, you connect, and then you come back on Vallecillo back to 35. It has to be parallel, or it can't just.
Yes, it has to be parallel, pretty much, to the road. It has to be very parallel to the road. For example, in one of the designations we did recently, it was Business 59. When we took 59 along Loop 20, that all Saunders became Business 59. So it has to be usually the way it works when they call it business is that's the old route, that we used to have, the old US route, and now it's becoming we build an alternate route, so we call the existing one business route, because it just got so developed, congested, so urbanized that it does not function as a highway anymore.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just an observation, if I could, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Of course. Yes, we can.
Good evening, and I want to thank Mr. Rodriguez for the presentation. Is exactly, I think, what we need to understand that the capacity or the capability of having a state highway or a state loop enhances our ability when we go to text, to go to the commissioners to reinforce the value of the volume of activity of traffic that network highway, and it actually it could lead into further enhancements in the future. It may not necessarily give us more faster funding, but it will reinforce, I guess, the argument that it's part of the next step to go for future expansions or future improvements. So if in our case, when we're trying to, my purpose of asking for this presentation is for this subcommittee to understand the process, to know that it's available. The requirements are not that difficult to obtain. I'm sure we can get stakeholders as well as the city and the county, and together with Representative Raymond and and Senator Sefri, all of that just alone, I think if we were to recommend the loop, the state loop, it solidifies our strategic location and our connectivity, because things can change in 2 or 3 years. You get new commissioners, you get new funding, you get other things, and I think we need to just take the next step. We got to walk before we run. I think this is something that could come out of the recommendation for the city council and the county commissioners to look at in the future. I think from our standpoint, that's something that I think would have a greater value. And I think the more activity we have, which we've already seen more traffic, whether it comes from the Columbia Solidarity Bridge and improvements eventually with more traffic that would come out of there in that potential spur, what comes out of World Trade already with expansion, all of that adds value to the designation of the State Loop 255 or State Loop 1472 as well. So that's something that I would ask that this committee consider for future reference, and then we'll determine whether we can go out for a different category of funding or leverage other forms of sources of funding for improvements to this particular network. All it can be is a recommendation.
Thank you.
Agreed. Yes, thank you, Mr. Schwab. And I know we're still going to be pending a couple of, at least one more presentation from you as far as any type of funding plans. But for now, I'd like to entertain a motion for permission from this committee. So when I go to the larger committee and present to the city council, that we ask city council, that I ask city council on behalf of this committee for a resolution in support of changing 1472 to either State Highway 255 or State Loop 255.
Motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All against?
Aye.
All against? Motion passes. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Rodriguez?
Just to thank him.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you.
Moving on to item number 7, presentation by Public Works Department with possible action and any other matters incident thereto. We have a pamphlet in front of us. I don't know if it's will you be putting that on our screens as well, Mr. Chavez?
Yes.
Excellent. Old school.
Good evening, members of the commission. Again, John Orfila for the record. And again, Ramon and I spent most of the afternoon working on this presentation, and I'll tell you, it's not easy trying to put something together that, is hard. I'm gonna come ask you to offer $750 million. So, we broke it up into several parts. We're gonna start off with industrial park, which I'm sure Arturo's gonna like. You have your streets, your cul-de-sacs, and your intersections. How many do we have if we were to add up all the existing industrial parks in the city? That gives you an idea of, this was plans that were developed back in 2008, 9, when we got the $20 million grant from the state, and we implemented it there. There's a cross-section there of two of the different examples. So we'll go into numbers. We have 120 intersections. Currently asphalt. That's not including, there's some that are already concreted. At 375,000, 10 inches thick of concrete. That'd be $45 million to concrete all the existing intersections of industrial parks. Cul-de-sacs, 104 of them at 210,000. The intersections are 250 feet by 250 feet in both directions. Cul-de-sacs again are 210. Again, concrete them all is close to $22 million. And then of course paving all the remaining streets, which adds up to approximately 52.5 miles at 1,248,000. Because they're not just standard residential streets, they're 27 back to back. So that's $65 million. So total to do all this industrial park improvements, we're divide the 132 million by 10 years. We'd be looking at a bond of 13 million, 0.2 per year for the next 10 years. And again, if we divide it by 20 years, you get 6.6 million.
Mr. Orfila, and this is not in-house, correct?
This is subbing it out. That is correct. The city, I usually don't shy from anything, but this is a lot of personnel, a lot of traffic control, and dangerous at the same time because you really have to shut down. And I can't leave the city to go work in industrial parks. My main priority is the city, but also again industrial parks. That's what keeps us going. Also. Second slide. Subdivision types and district. On the top left, you'll see council district in miles. That's how many residential miles we have per district. Then you have subdivision types, commercial, industrial, outside of major subdivision, and residential in miles. And then you have your thoroughfare classes. And on the right you have, again, district color-coded, the miles by subdivision. No questions, I'll go to the next one.
No question.
Subdivision types and district. This was something that we found, local streets, the different types of streets that we have in Laredo. Your local streets, which is the majority, your major collectors, minor arterials, major arterials, industrial collectors, and modified major arterials, which total up to, again, 855 miles throughout the city.
Now, this is 855 miles of our city, but not necessarily all 855 miles needs to be repaved. At the moment, that's not to say that at some time and place they may.
That is, a lot of those have already been done. All right, street improvement. This is if we were to do the paving in-house, public works, the city. Residential, 622 miles at $288,000 a mile. That'd be $179 million to do the whole city. Commercial, 16 miles at $480,000 a mile, because those are wider. They're not just standard 27 back to back. Total cost $7.6 million. Outside the subdivisions, 164 miles at $480,000 a mile, and total cost of 78 million. Some of y'all might be wondering, what is an outside subdivision? Again, it's 164 miles, that's quite a bit. For example, your McPherson, it's not in a subdivision. Everybody, it's shared by all the subdivisions in between Lomas del Sur, Ejido, Clark Boulevard, all those are not subdivisions. So that's where that's why it's more expensive. It's same as commercial, they're a lot wider.
Mr. Orfila, in your opinion, which one of these three different types of thoroughfares are the ones in the biggest need of resurfacing?
Well, everybody needs the outside subdivision to go from one point to the other. We must have good streets, again, for PD, fire, and for us to get to, again, to travel throughout the city. Residential, of course, it's also needed. Some streets are needed more than others, depending on the part of town. And again, your commercial, again, your central business district, your Monarchs of the world, Carlton, where there's commercial on both sides. So if we were to add up all that, it's 265 million, which is a hell of a lot of money. You divide that in 10 years, it's $26 million a year. And I really don't think I can do all those in 10 years, but in 20 years, 13 million.
One question. When you said
Commissioner Alvarez.
10 years, Mr. Orfila, are you saying that it would take you 10 years to pave all those streets in questions?
No, that's how much money it would take.
I understand.
Could I do it all? I could probably push 700 blocks
In a year?
in a year. I've done 850. We did that the first year when we started
So
that thing.
to say that you would do all those in questions, would you say in 5 years you would do the whole,
I would do what?
in 5 years you will cover the entire city?
No way, no.
And that's what I'm saying.
No.
So this money they will be allocated with the life expectancy of the street that you started 5 years before the next 10 years. I mean, what will be the life expectancy?
It should be 20 years. Again, depending on the part of town.
The usage and the traffic, so.
And the
You
soil.
have to do a lot more with your
But then
subsoils.
we have to go back and resurface them again. I mean, down the road,
Of course.
and the money will come from where?
That's what we're here for.
No, I understand, but let's assume that the people will approve and give you the $265 million, and 10 years down the road, they need to resurface. Are we gonna go back and ask for more money from the citizens?
I'm hoping not. Again, streets that need to be repaired before resurfacing, we must attack that first. And I'm talking about everything being developed to the
Right.
north. And I'm talking, again, installing French drains or whatever
Right,
needs to be done.
infrastructure of
Right,
underneath the,
improvements in the infrastructure
Right.
before we actually come in and overlay. Once that's taken care of, the streets will last 20 years. Again, Clark Boulevard, we did it, the first go around 2008, 2009.
6, I believe.
And again, it's still in great shape.
Yeah.
Again, it has to do with your base, and it's good there. A lot of residential areas are still good that we did years
The reason I'm
ago.
asking this question is because the first time we were all sworn in, the city manager made some comments that maybe down the road, 5 years from the, and once if the referendum should be approved, 5 years down the road, they probably come back and ask for more money from the citizens. So it gets to a point to where the taxpayer is gonna start questioning, where is it gonna stop? On what part of the,
Well, that's the problem, that we stopped. We should have never stopped. That's the main problem. We stopped for 6, 7 years of paving. So now we're playing catch up. We would have never stopped. We, again, I might not have completed the whole city, but I wouldn't be as far.
I understand.
Again, you take care of the worst, and eventually you medium out, you balance out where everything is, it's balanced. But again, we started paving 2 years ago, so that's why it's a hot topic.
Thank you, sir.
And the worst streets, which are the worst ones? The ones with the water breaks, the ones people are complaining about. All right, so then, again, that just gives you a number. I'm not saying I can pave all the streets in Laredo in 10 years, but it puts it into perspective of what we would need. And go 30 years, divide that, bring the number even down lower. street improvements total cost. So we got residential, commercial, and other in-house, 803 miles, 265 million. And you add the industrial parks that we talked about, that's close to 400 million. So you divide that in 10 years, it's 39.7 million. And in 20 years, 19.9 million. Keep in mind the industrial parks that we could sub out, I would sub out all of it. We would need again the engineering plans and specs, and then sub it out into several different contractors and work them all depending on the amount of money, if it were to be approved by you all and the council. Any questions on this slide?
I have a question, Mr. Orfila, and,
Trouble?
pardon my ignorance, but what, is there a life expectancy when a street is actually paved before it is a planned improvement, or how do you schedule those improvements over the life of any street in the city like Laredo?
In a new subdivision that are currently being built, should be 20 years. And they are
20 years.
being built according to plans, according to engineering specs. But again, water and soil just don't mix. That's a wrong combination. And again, all these new subdivisions, as you well know, they all have irrigation systems. The soils, I mean, the PI, it's a clay type of material, very high, and water does not seem to move anywhere. Stays on the subsurface, and eventually makes it under the street. So all those streets, again, I'm having to tackle now as we speak, installing French drains to take care of the problem. And yes, I've gone to council in the past to try and make the developers install the French drains, but that didn't pass. So regular streets in South Laredo, Central Laredo, West and East, they'll last you 20 years. I can't control the water breaks though. If the water break comes up, pops the street, now you have an uneven street. That happens very, very common in the old parts of town, and even some in the new.
And is there a distinction between, obviously residential and commercial, life, or they're all 20
Commercial,
years?
again, yes, the commercial streets are built with higher standards. They're not putting the black base, what I would put, but they're putting, you know, 16 inches of caliche and your asphalt on top. I think it's type C, and I don't have to tell you how many trucks come in and out of industrial parks. Those tires, they constantly turning, they're shoving the asphalt, and then a lot of those industrial parks, warehouses, you know, they're beautiful. They all have beautiful landscaping, green grass and beautiful trees and all that. Again, we go back to the water, but the base is different. Well, they might water the plants and the water goes down. It doesn't stay in the subsurface. It does hurt our streets though, again, because a lot of the water irrigation system, they were working at nighttime, and nobody's there to see that they're actually irrigating the street, not the grass. Trucks go on that, break on that, and that's where it all starts. Many different scenarios that can happen, but industrial parks, we've been able to maintain them in the last 20 years. Public Works has, but it's time we start putting some money into them, because eventually it's going to catch up to maybe not this council, but the future. I mean, the city's just growing. We need to start now. And I preach this every 5 years or so. And that's where we're at.
Chairman,
Yeah, Commissioner?
I'm curious, what stopped this process from continuing? Earlier you mentioned that. I'm just curious to know what stopped it. Was it council that stopped it, or
No money?
money?
Different council members have different visions.
Okay.
Some council as a whole love parks and recreation. Other councils love infrastructure, which was your public works and utilities. Others love purchasing land in the downtown. You know, development of the downtown back in the early 2000s. Everybody's just different. We've changed city managers. And,
Have we done an analysis of how economically, from an economic development perspective, this affected our city?
how it affected?
Yes. Or has anybody considered doing an economic impact report to see how stopping this has impacted our economic growth?
We've never done a study, but we do know what parts of town and what areas of town have been affected the most, and what needs the most attention, and where we need to hit first and tackle. But here we go with studies again. No studies. We drive our streets on a daily basis. Next one. This one will blow your mind here. We're almost done. Street improvement total cost. If I were to sub out the resurfacing, because let's say we want to do it fast in the city, let's pave the whole city, get help from the outside. The residential, commercial, and other, not including industrial, would be $1 billion. $1 billion.
So doing it in-house saves us $800 million, basically, somewhere around there in the neighborhood.
That is correct. And these are current numbers. I'm not, numbers are going to go up. Again, just to give you a figure on doing what we do, what Public Works does in-house.
Let me ask you another question, Mr. Orfila. The 52 miles in the industrial parks, that's going to get subbed out.
Yes.
If you know, everything goes as the council would like. How long would that take the outside company or companies to
Depending on how many we got, depending on how much money we got. You give me 132 million, we'll get 2, 3, 4 engineering firms to hit it, and then sub out all of them and move
a year?
to start.
Okay. Any questions?
And you can't hit them all at the same time because
Yeah.
traffic control, you can't shut down an industrial park.
Actually.
And that water there, right there, you see coming out,
That is testing water?
that is from a French drain. That's 24/7.
Where is that?
They're all over town. That's everywhere. If I could put that in the tanks at the ranch, they'll be full.
Is that normal for a French drain to drain?
All the
That's
time.
just,
All the time. Oh yeah, they're all. I can take you to see, put some that I put 20 years ago, and they're still going at it. Any questions?
and so the committee knows, we've, one of the things that Mr. Orfila suggested once is us actually giving, because the French drain is just PVC pipe that you put in there before you put all the, you do the finishing work on the street. We suggested giving the material to the developers so that they can install them, and even that, they didn't want to mess with it at all. So it's a process on having to work with them and make sure that they're part of the solution, right? But like any other businessman, they're looking at their bottom line, which I understand, but at the end of the day, we all pay for it, and including them. Any other questions?
Anything to report in the next meeting that you all would like?
Anything else? Any more information? Motions? Mr. Schwebel, do you have any comments?
Gary?
Oh, no, thank you very much. This is very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, no action taken. Moving on to item number 8. Presentation by Engineering Department Traffic Division with possible action and any other matters incident thereto.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Ramon Chavez, City Engineer. I'm going to have Mr. Albert Quintanilla, our Assistant Director, present.
he just responded late.
Are you able to see it on your screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
There it is.
Okay, okay. Good evening, Albert Quintanilla, Assistant Director for Traffic Safety for the City of Laredo. Earlier, Mr. Roberto Rodriguez, who TxDOT provided his presentation. Part of it, he discussed the traffic and congestion on Mines Road. They have updated numbers. Unfortunately, they haven't posted it on their website yet. So this first screen here you're showing, that's from last year's numbers. It will be updated, and like he said, Mines Road is no longer number 2 on the list. It's moved down on the list somewhere, but I'm not exactly sure where it's fallen yet, but we'll figure that out. But the bigger deal is I want to figure out, if you go through to the next page, from last year's report, the top congested roadways in the state, Mines Road was number 25. That's for cars and trucks and everything else. And if you look at it, the biggest deal that stuck in my mind is that if you go through all the roads in Texas, and Mines Road is number 25, but all the roads above there are all controlled access facilities. They have frontage roads and ramps and overpasses and everything else. Mines Road doesn't. And the ones beneath Mines Road for a distance go the same way. Mines Road is the only surface road. In other words, you get on and you drive, and stop signs, not stop signs, but signals and everything else, you make left turns. There's no overpasses, there's no frontage roads or anything else. It's just a regular surface roadway. And that's for all vehicles, right? Number 25. If you went to the trucks, we're number 2 again. Like I tell you, we're still a surface roadway. The interesting thing there is, if you go down to number 12, Bob Bullock Loop is on there. And Mr. Rodriguez said, well, we dropped the traffic on Mines Road because we closed that ramp and we shifted the congestion. So it's no longer congestion back. The congestion's not on Mines Road. It just shifted over it. Now it's on the loop. So what we're going to see is we're going to see Mines Road drop from number 2, but number 12 is probably going to move up because we moved that traffic over there. So we're not really solving the congestion problem. We're just moving it around. Really that's the way traffic works. There's no magic pill where we get rid of all the traffic and get rid of all the congestion. So we're going to try to do the best we can.
But it's a different mechanism for funding.
Yes.
It's a highway when it's a farm road.
Exactly.
That's why they moved it.
Right.
They need to put a second story, just let them put whatever they
Right.
have
Exactly.
to do.
Then you do whatever they have to do.
But, I mean, compared to the rest, I mean, they're all metropolitan cities. I mean,
Exactly.
we're a little town.
Right.
It's part of your triangle.
Yes.
It's your state triangle.
Right. And the one thing to look at is, we're the largest inland port in the nation, right? Is the amount of delay. Like I say, in a business environment, time is money. You have all that delay. The trucking, the industry is going to find a way. How can I get away from this delay? How am I going to get away to get things faster? And they're going to find a better route. And then if you look at the congestion cost, $10 million a year, we want to see what we can do to decrease that amount as much as possible. Basically, the project we're looking at is on Mines Road from Bob Bullock Loop all the way out to Pinnacle. There's 9 traffic signals existing right now. And we want to see if we can upgrade all those 9 signals. And I feel like a used car salesman, sort of, because last week or 2 weeks ago when it showed up, and I told you all it was last week, it was an approximate cost of about $4 million. Now I'm coming back with an offer of $2.8 million to do it all. So,
Okay, we're going in the right direction anyway.
And so, looking at the cost, what we want to do, design cost is about $310,000. That's where the engineering and contingencies, to have a little bit of a buffer in there in case we add other things to it in the way. Construction cost, there's 9 signals to do the upgrades on each individual signal. That's put in new cabinets, larger cabinets, we can put more equipment in there, put in new cameras on on each individual cabinet, the total cost of $720,000, which is roughly, what is it? Got another slide later on showing what the cost is per signal, right? But then we need to make sure that each signal is talking to one another. We want to upgrade the communication system, and that's to run fiber optic cables between them all so they can talk to one another. That will cost about $900,000. That's about roughly close to 4 miles worth of fiber optic cable, conduit, and everything else, trenching, you name it, underneath the highway and boring and everything else involved. And then we want to do some upgrades to our traffic management center because we get the communications. We want to get them to our traffic center, so from our traffic center we can see what the signals are doing and actually make adjustments on the fly and make sure we can get the traffic flowing again. And that's about $360,000. Then you got to figure out the bond cost for the contractor, his mobilization cost to bring in his equipment and do everything. All that's about another $200,000. Construction engineering to make sure they're we're testing everything they're doing out there and going through the testing periods, doing all the inspection, all that, about $130,000. And just in case, time between now and whenever we get to construction, about another $100,000. Total cost about 2.49 for that. So estimated cost, engineering and construction, about $2.8 million. That's what we want to see from our traffic management center with the upgrades. And we have a traffic management center now, but we don't have Mines Road out there fully the way we want to have it out there to upgrade it. I'll give you a good example. Right now, TxDOT has a contract where they're doing some synchronization work on the signals out there. Yesterday morning, if anywhere you're out there on Mines Road, there was quite a bit of backups near the Pinnacle intersection and Verde intersection. We saw it on Google Maps. I saw it in my office in Google Maps, so I went over there to our traffic center and told them, there's something going on out there. So we started looking up the cameras to see what's going on. We couldn't see anything other than the traffic backing up. There's no accidents out there or stalled vehicles or anything like that. So we get a hold of TxDOT, and their consultants out there working, they change the signal timings. And we have a 180-second cycle. So it's about every 3 minutes this goes a complete cycle through that signal. While they're doing their synchronization, they change the cycle from 180 seconds to 160 seconds. So just knocked off 20 seconds from each one of the cycles. And they thought they could get the traffic flowing better again. It didn't work. So we automatically went through there, got with them, got their approval, and we put back our 180 second cycle back in there. And it took roughly about 3 hours to get the traffic flow through there and going again.
Is that normal? They normally go in there without consulting you?
Well, because it's their project. And so they told us they're going to do it, and we reviewed their plans and told them, okay, it looks like it's going to work, we'll go for it.
Okay, okay.
And then, when we started seeing the results, we went in there and took the lead and said, let's make these changes and go back to what we had.
Yeah.
And so then we got back with the consultant this morning as well, and they said, okay, we'll cancel their sequence. They said they're going to cancel their sequence, let's revert back to ours, and they're going to study our sequences that we had previously and see what they can do to modify them and tweak them. And so it's an ongoing process. And all that was done without anybody actually being in the field. You know, it's all done from our office, and TxDOT was doing it from their office before when they did the changes, you know.
Y'all consider that the trucks take longer to
That's why
start
we did
going?
the 180 second,
Yeah.
to give them as much time as possible. Because the time for them to take off from the signal is it's a killer. It eats up a lot of the signals intersection, you know, that phase of the traffic.
And this could have been different if you had the infrastructure and the design to be able to provide oversight before you had to go to Google.
Well,
Find this information, is that?
yes, it would have highlighted that it would have been faster, and then also the communication with probably the $2.8 million, it'd be connected with fiber optic. And right now we're doing it all with radio waves, so it's a little bit slower.
Nice. Okay. Approved.
And to get to Pinnacle, in actuality, our
I'm a
radio
tech
towers, the way they're
person,
set up, the radio waves go across the river to get from Pinnacle to our radio towers. So we're actually shooting our radio waves across the border.
I'm getting frustrated just by you saying radio waves. Okay.
But here's the cost per location, and showing the different costs for each thing involved, right? The new controller cabinets, which is actually $19,000 for a brand new cabinet, bigger cabinet, taller, wider, to be able to hold everything. A vehicle detection, which are better cameras, they're clearer. UPS is battery backup. With the battery backup, power goes out, we'd have at least 2 hours time that the signal can be working on batteries. It gives us time to restore power to keep the signal going, as opposed to now the power goes out, the signal goes out, and traffic starts backing up instantly. Fiber switch is a switch to switch over for the fiber optic cables, and the cameras, I can tell you, is better for detection. The PTZ cameras are actually cameras that we can have on the intersection, where we get to see not just the vehicles for detection is one set of cameras, and the PTZ cameras is to see the traffic in the area from our office. So we can see the traffic going down the road and seeing everything's going correctly.
Sir, can I ask you a question on the camera?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? I mean, those cameras are just to see what's going on live.
Right.
It doesn't record anything.
They do not record because we don't have the capacity to store all that information, and it take a lot of storage to record. If we had all the storage capacity, you figure we have 260 signals in the city. If we had to store all that data, it'd take up a tremendous amount of space.
We're not asking for the whole city.
Right.
But the most important
Right.
highways, in case of an accident, I don't know if it's against the law to record them, but
It's not against the law or anything else, but for us, it's easier if we don't have that information. We don't have to worry about it. And we're not interested in the historical stuff and the accidents and all that stuff, because the police department has their own cameras apart from ours as well. And they do record theirs. And so we don't mess with that at all. We just take care of monitoring traffic.
Commissioner Narvaez?
I have a question. So these cameras are throughout the city or only in the main roads?
We try to have them on all signals, but we don't have them on all signals. And then sometimes those cameras go down and we're getting replaced. And but we try.
But also it's like for Mines Road,
Yes.
35, and the Loop.
The Loop, yes, and we have them on Clark, and we have them on Saunders.
You have them on 359?
359, yes, we have cameras.
So if they call and they say there's something going on here, what they can do is they can look at what's coming and they can spin them also to go
And
down.
it helps
there.
us because
So-
that way we get to see what the problem is before actually having a crew go in the field.
And now that you mentioned Clark, you say you have cameras in Clark?
Yes,
The reason I'm saying this is because a lot of 18-wheelers get up spur 400,
yes,
traveling on Clark to 35.
right.
And I reported that to police department that every morning and late, like around this time or earlier, you see people getting off the loop. I already called TxDOT to report them that they need to put more signage that the Sport 400 ends in Arkansas.
Right.
But now they're using Clark to get the shortcut to 35.
235, right? Yes. We'll work on the additional signs. That's one thing we're trying to get to as well, to improve our signs. But our main focus is right now the construction and getting the signals going as best as possible. The communication systems, to talk to each one of them, we're gonna run 2-inch pipe, basically, a 2-inch conduit between the signals, basically from Pinnacle all the way down to Loop 20. And then put the fiber optic cables through there, put ground boxes, so every 1,500 feet, we can actually have an access. If there's something that happens to the cable, every 1,500 feet, we can, make a repair or replace the 1,500-foot section of cable.
One more quick.
Commissioner Alvarez?
This presentation, do you present it before council?
Not yet.
Okay, that's what, honestly, because this, I think that council needs to take action
Right.
and give you the funding.
Yes.
Well,
That's what we're gonna be
So I
doing if
understand.
this is a
But
proposal
even if we
for
don't
us.
have, we didn't have this committee, so these are things that council needs to fund.
Yes.
very necessary.
Well, the other thing is there may be other opportunities to partner with other entities.
Yes. And to-
Grant opportunities, I know are available, not the best, but
Yes, we recently applied for a $2 million SMART grant through TxDOT as well. And we haven't heard back on that yet, but, so we are trying to find other funding sources for this.
How much was 200 or
2 million.
2
$2
million?
million? And it was with the SMART program?
With a it was TxDOT SMART grant, yes.
Okay.
And then the traffic management center, we want to have monitoring equipment, we want to do the computers, the server room upgrades for our computer servers, and then the remodeling cost for the building, so we can get access into the building a lot better for this traffic management. And part of the whole system here and everything else as well is their adaptive traffic signals. So right now, they be able to monitor the traffic now, but be able to communicate with vehicles in the future as well as the vehicles get more advanced. As it is right now, people don't realize it, but when you drive around with your cell phone, you have your maps on and everything else, you're actually sending out signals, and that information, well, the new signals, we spoke to a representative from the corporation that does this work, Iteris. They're fixing in 2 years to be able to start reading that information. The signal will actually get the information to know this vehicle is coming down the road, and they'll be able to figure out, okay, there's a queue of 20 vehicles coming to this intersection, and they can make adjustments on the sequence of the timing to get those vehicles to that intersection better. That's what we want to do, especially for our trucks. Because like you're saying, the stopping time. If we means, well, you know what, you hold the green for 10 more seconds, but we can clear out 15 trucks, it's that much better.
Have you all counted how many trucks come from Colombia?
We haven't counted the numbers, we don't have the exact numbers, but it varies. There's quite a bit sometimes during the day, and other parts of the time frame, there's not much at all. In the evenings, you get to see the traffic, returning back, but during the morning, sometimes there's quite a bit of truck traffic through there.
And when you see a lot of traffic, do you send police out there?
If we see an accident, we
No
but-
accident.
But just normal with a lot of traffic and everything else, we don't, we monitor and see what we can do. And if there's, something that's there, a disabled vehicle or anything else, then we do notify police department. But other than that, we don't do anything with it.
It happens every now and again at the direction of council for just a time period of time. Like, we did it a couple of times when we were council, we directed that, but the chief doesn't like to do it because you're spreading his officers thin. But if there's a directive from council for a while, sometimes it does happen for a while.
Because when they increased the toll for the bridges, they assigned 2 police officers for World Trade. So they're right there on Mines Road. It's just telling them, look, go control them by hand, get the traffic out of them, and go back to your regular position.
What we do is we won't call the police department. We'll go out there and we'll monitor it on the system, right? But then we send somebody out there and to go look and see what we can do. And if we're seeing that it's not clearing, we switch it, get the manual access to the open the cabinet, and we stop the lights on the side road to clear out the traffic on Mines Road. And so we actually stop the cycles on the deal to clear out the traffic a lot faster.
So you all actually, your team does actually go out? And
If we need to,
don't
after we see this, there's a backup, and we try doing what we can in the office, we can't figure it out, then we'll go to the field and reset it to get the traffic flushed out.
Going.
How many people you have for that?
In our signal crew, we have basically 4 guys that do this type of signal work, but then we have the signal crew that does the construction and maintenance and repairs as well. We have a couple more folks in that area department as well. So we have about 18 people altogether working on signals.
Is that a reasonable amount of personnel for our city infrastructure needs?
You're setting me up for failure because I'll always say we need more. We could always use more people. We could always use more money, but it's a reasonable amount, basically. We're trying to do our best we can with what we have. One of the issues we had recently was we had one of our bucket trucks. We took it in for repairs at the shop where it was at. There was a fire in the vehicle next door, and our vehicle caught on fire and burned. So we lost a bucket truck. So right now we're short a bucket truck, but we're borrowing off the IT department or off of Public Works to go on in Public Works either or Parks and Rec to keep doing the work we need to do. But we're finding ways to keep going. So.
Thank you.
Got a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Schwab, go ahead.
Thank you very much. First question is in regards to this TMC, the Traffic Management Centers. I didn't quite understand. You all have, the city has its own traffic management center?
Yes, sir. It's there at our
And how
office.
does it not tie in to the TxDOT Management Center?
We're watching the same thing. We're tied into them, but we have a lot of signals apart from what TxDOT signals are. So we watch a lot more traffic signals than they do.
So you're in other words, the city's TMC has broader coverage than the TxDOT.
Yes, and at the
Okay.
same time, it's smaller.
Okay, that's one question. So I guess we've got two TMCs basically, or does anyone else have another TMC? Does the county have a TMC?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so city has a TMC and TxDOT's TMC as far as you know right now.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Second question is, when you're looking at that breakdown that you had of the congestion and the cost of the congestion on both the Loop 20 as well as on Market or 1472, how much discussion is there with the developers that are building residential areas or industrial park areas prior to in the planning of an anticipated number of additional vehicles? By that I mean, let's say on the loop, there's 5 new residential areas. They're going to put up 200 homes. How do you what formulas do you use? Is it 200 homes is going to have two cars per home? By the period of 2 years, there'll be an additional 400 cars, ingress or egress off the loop. Do you have any of that planning with the developers when you?
We work with the developers. We work with the developers, and what they do is develop what's called a traffic impact analysis. And we don't have it in our ordinance fully right now, where they're mandatory to submit the traffic impact analysis. But as they're doing developments, depending on the size of the development, depends the extent of the impact analysis that needs to be done to figure out how much additional traffic that development is going to generate on the roadway, and then from there you figure out what type of improvements they need to do, whether on site within their development or on the approaches to their development as well.
Yeah, my question is my more concern is that we look at talking about practices or best practices. We're reacting after the project is built, or are we planning something
No.
in not just the egress, knowing that we're going to mix, like Mines Road. One of the challenges that we have had over the 24 years as the World Trade was built was that you began mixing the residential areas with the industrial areas, and you began mixing cars with trucks. Truck volumes goes up, car volumes go up with more residences and more people having cars, 1, 2, 3, or 4 cars.
Right.
But the infrastructure planning or the 1472, or the loop, how is the planning done to accommodate that increase in traffic that is anticipated for 5 or 10 or 20 years from there? Or are we just reacting once it's built and we see how many more vehicles there are, and then we have to figure out a strategy? Or are we really sitting down and having strategic sessions to how you plan the mobility of that increased volume of traffic through those areas that are being developed, be it the loop, be it 1472, be it wherever, South Laredo, wherever? How is the city traffic management system working with the developers?
What we do is we work through the planning and zoning department, and we work with the city planner on the developments. They show us what the developments are. We get copies of the plans coming in, the plats, showing what the developments are gonna be, and we work with them. And that's when we start asking for the traffic information, see what improvements are needed. And when they have the zoning request, and we always push back on zoning requests where they wanna make a zoning change in an industrial area for residential. But it's the development thing, and you gotta, there's a balance you need to have where it can't just be strict that, you know, we wanna have this, cause there's economic factors, economic development, you still wanna bring, you know, the city to grow, increase the tax base, and so you wanna make changes, and so sometimes there's a give and take there, but we work with the planning and zoning commission closely on all developments coming in and figuring out what traffic impacts are gonna be, and what things make sense and what things don't make sense. And all we can do is limit, you know, we make suggestions, but it comes down to the planning and zoning commission. And the
Well,
council.
I just out of curiosity I guess, to the chairman and Mr. Narvaez, or city council member, does that come to you from planning and zoning when they say, hey, we're gonna develop 200 acres and we're gonna put X number of homes, that's gonna be a number of vehicles, does that come to you all for final approval? The city council?
Plats do not come, good question. Plats do not come to city council. Planning and zoning has the final say on plats, and that's when you're putting together these larger developments. Zone changes, I mean, by default, when land gets annexed into the city is an R1, I believe is the default.
Right.
So normally, you know, none of that zoning change comes to planning or to city council. We just deal with a lot of light commercial stuff when they want to go to B1, B2, or B3s and B4. So we don't really get into the development of neighborhoods, if you will. And you know, government, unfortunately, government by nature is always playing catch up. That's what government does. Unfortunately, that's just the reality. And Commissioner Dominguez had a really good point earlier. The reason why we have such an issue in Mines Road is because the World Trade Bridge was built. And why was the World Trade Bridge built? Because 35 was at more than capacity, right? So we switched an issue from 35 that we needed to get, and we moved it over to 1472. So now we have an issue over there. And let's not go too far. We're talking about bringing in another bridge, right? 4 or 5 downtown that also we do not have the infrastructure for. And we're going to be playing catch up there as well. And that's on government. It by nature puts the cart before the horse, because, and a lot of it is out of necessity. One is a lack of planning and just communication, but a lot of it is also a necessity because we need to create that revenue stream so we can take that revenue stream and then put it into stuff that we probably should have invested in before, but we can't invest it in now because we don't have the revenue stream. So it's just, you know, it's this vicious cycle. That's just the reality of government.
Exactly.
So just to confirm, so we have no ordinance right now that requires in the developmental stage to have a traffic input control or a traffic impact analysis, correct?
Not a formal traffic, it's not a formal deal.
There's a practice, but not a.
Right,
Okay, thank you,
and we're working on that.
thank you.
Yeah, and part of the development procedure, it has to do all the planning and zoning, the development rules, the development code, is that some of the stuff is where they're doing phase developments. And so they can say, well, you know what, I'm gonna build this phase, but the ultimate is gonna have this major thoroughfare through there. But I'm gonna wait till the future to do it, to the future. And then you build the next phase and I'll do the development in the next future. In the future, I'll do that major thoroughfare. And they keep pushing it down the road and pushing it down the road. And at some point, we need it now, we can't wait anymore, but they still have a couple more phases to build out. And there's no real teeth that we can force the contractor or the developer to build those major thoroughfares at this point.
Yeah. Is it on the contractors to build those major arterials?
It depends on their development, what they're doing as part of their development plans. If a major thoroughfare is running through their section of the development, they need to take care of it, they need to address it.
Okay, but as it pertains to like Loop 20, I mean
No, not the state highways are totally different.
Yeah.
But you know, there's right now in the north end of town, there's some extensions on, I can't remember the name, Longhorn Drive, I believe, north of the high school that we want to get connected to 35. That'll be going through some of the developments, and so we're pushing, making sure the developer has those in his plans. But they're developing everything around it and staying away from
like an international.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Just an observation, just for the purpose of the subcommittee. And I know that the city has worked on regards to ordinances of these on the trucks because of all the mobility of trucks throughout the city. I know that the state of Texas, I'll be in Austin next week, and one of the city the other thing that TxDOT is working with communities is designated parking areas for trucks. That has pros and its cons, but that's got a lot of momentum because communities, both rural and urban, wanting to move trucks out of the city into designated parking areas so that they're not traversing within the city and creating congestion or creating, bottlenecks to that because you're mixing them with vehicles, and that's something that TxDOT is really working real hard. That if it's not going to come from local ordinances, it may come from TxDOT or from the state. Making sure that communities have adequate truck parking zones for their communities. So I just want to, just put that on the table just for information for you all, because it's got a lot of momentum in both urban and rural areas where people don't want these trucks within either certain periods of the day or certain parts of communities. And that for us that live off trucks and see a lot of that activity, I'm just making you aware that there's a lot of rhetoric in Austin about that to TxDOT. So I think both you all in the city traffic management side or on the staff should really be having some kind of an understanding and knowledge of what TxDOT is doing in regards to parking of these heavy vehicles. Yeah.
That's good to
Yeah,
know.
I think one of the concerns is just the tractor itself, just roaming around and parking in Popeyes and all those public places that are damaging the real normal streets, that they shouldn't be allowed to be roaming around that in an empty tractor. I think that's where the parking lot should be, because it's different when you have a truckload that has to go to a warehouse and it's gonna sit outside. That's where he's gonna sleep, because once he turns on that truck, the driving hours start. So he'll wait till they open the warehouse, talk to the guy in the warehouse, wait, well, you're number 5, and so he's not gonna turn it on until he's ready to get loaded and take off. So there's pros and cons, but there has to be something done with those tractors that are just roaming around because they don't have a terminal, but they're destroying our streets and congesting more the streets. That's an observation.
Yeah, the parking lot at HEB Plus is a prime example. There's always trucks there, always.
Well, to me, I think those just come pick up loads and take money. I mean, they don't leave anything in this port, but they use it to make money. Something as an observation.
Thank you. Is there any other questions, concerns, motions?
I mean, I'd like to entertain a motion
Go ahead.
for his proposal. I like it.
So you want a motion on the floor to,
Take it to council.
take to council the 2.8 million?
Yes.
Right, suggest a $2.8 million for this project, to get funded.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
No pelear, right?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, all against? 4, unanimous? Okay, all in favor, it's unanimous, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I think that's good bang for our buck there.
Yep.
Okay, so moving on to the next item number 9, discussion with possible action on the selection of the location, dates, time for the next bond referendum, public infrastructure subcommittee meeting, and any other matters incident thereto. I believe there was something, before we adjourn, before we continue with this discussion, I believe there was another item that we wanted to possibly entertain at our next meeting. Mr. Orfila? Whenever that meeting is, and we'll discuss that in a bit.
Again, members of the committee, John Orfila. Got some calls reference Wi-Fi in different parts of the city, and to see if there was any way we could bring it into you all, being that I'm involved with you all. Again, the Wi-Fi in around the school areas, citywide. I understand there's a lot of kids out there that really do not have any means to do their homework. Now they all have tablets that they take home. And I said I would definitely bring it up to you all.
And this is something some other cities have
They've,
done.
it's gone to council years ago. They brought it up. And again, that's what I'm here for, to see.
We're about 20 years behind on this, by the way.
But
Definitely our city's behind on
isn't
this.
there monies from the infrastructure bill grants that you can apply for to get things like that? I think internet was part of the infrastructure bill, that big chunk of money that the government, the federal government, have you all looked into that? Somebody?
Well, if you'd entertain a motion to bring back a presentation in the next meeting, then I'll bring somebody that is
Motion
qualified to speak on that, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to bring a presentation talking about
Wi-Fi.
possibly Wi-Fi in our city. There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Motion passes. Thank you very much. So we have this item that we'll be discussing at our next meeting. Is there anything else, any other departments, any more details that the committee would like to see before we really get into what we're going to be presenting to City Council? Because if that's not the case, if we've already gotten all the information that we'd like to, then I'd suggest we meet right before, skip next week, meet the week after that, right before Thanksgiving, put together our presentation, and then meet one more time after that, just in case there's any, possibly meet one more time after that, just in case there's any other changes. And if that's the case, then I would like staff to, go ahead, everyone. I'll speak while you're walking up. I would like staff to send any and all information that we've had in the last two meetings to us via email, so we can go over, so that in the next meeting, we'll have that information at our disposal, so we can mold it over and come prepared with any types of ideas and or motions at our next meeting. Mr. Chavez.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Chairman, members of the committee, Ramon Chavez, City Engineer. Yes, we will put all that package together. As a matter of fact, I sent some earlier from previous meetings, but I'll put everything in a way that it'll be easy to access and you can just download it quickly. I'll put the date of the meeting and so forth. So besides that, the other point that I wanted to just make is I just found out a little while ago that the whole committee, there's a meeting that's going to be scheduled for November the 12th, which is next Tuesday at 5:30 here. Okay. And just brief discussion, when I went out with Mr. Frank Mata, who's overseeing all the committees, was that if y'all had any presentations ready, you could be ready to present those, but if not, at least have just any conversation that you want to bring up.
Yeah.
So those are the points. The meeting is November the 12th, which is next Tuesday at 5:30. I just wanted to make...
Here in Chambers.
Yes. I just wanted to make y'all aware so that we can see how that's going to schedule into the upcoming
Our
meetings.
meeting will be on the 19th of when?
Yeah, well, so we're all in agreement that there's no other information that we need other than the information we've already had, and we wanted this.
The pending presentation.
Yeah, well, that one will be at our next meeting regardless. That motion has passed. So if that's the case, then I would like to entertain a motion to meet on November 19th at City Council Chambers at 5:30.
Yes, sir, motion?
That motion I'm entertaining. Can somebody move it? That's it.
Motion
So moved. There's a motion, there's a second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Is that good with you, Mr. Schwab? Okay, so motion passes. We will be meeting November 19th at 5:30 here in City Council Chambers, ready to possibly make some suggestions to City Council or to the big committee, and we have one more presentation by Mr. Arfila. Okay, thank you very much. Making
Motion.
progress. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab.